Welcome back to EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and today we're diving into something that's reshaping how enterprises operate across Europe: Agentic AI and how to build compliant systems ahead of the EU AI Act deadline. Sam, we're talking about autonomous agents, not chatbots, but actual AI systems making decisions and executing workflows independently. This is a big shift, isn't it?
Absolutely. And here's what makes it urgent. The EU AI Act enforcement deadline is August 2nd, 2026. That's not far away. What's fascinating is the numbers. McKinsey found that while 55% of enterprises have adopted generative AI, only 28% have governance frameworks ready for autonomous agents. That's a massive compliance gap.
That gap is striking. So let's break down what we mean by Agentic AI. Traditional chatbots respond to queries in predefined ways, right? But agents are different. They perceive their environment, make decisions, and execute actions toward objectives with minimal human oversight. Can you walk us through what that actually looks like in a real business?
Sure. Imagine a procurement agent in a logistics company. Instead of waiting for a human to review and approve purchase orders, the agent monitors inventory levels, compares supplier quotes in real time, executes orders when thresholds are hit, and flags exceptions to humans only when something's genuinely unusual. That's autonomous workflow execution. It's not just faster. Gartner reports efficiency gains of 30 to 45% for enterprises implementing this well.
30 to 45% is massive, and the agent can integrate across multiple systems simultaneously: ERP, CRM, legacy platforms, without manual handoffs. That's what you mean by cross-system integration, correct?
Exactly. And here's the critical part. These agents learn and improve continuously. They analyze interaction logs, receive feedback, and adapt their decision-making patterns. But that continuous learning is also what regulators are watching closely under the EU AI Act.
That leads us to governance. Forrester identifies 3 adoption tiers. The first is foundational: single-purpose agents handling routine tasks like data entry. About 40% of enterprises are here, but the real maturity game is Tier 3. Self-organizing agent meshes with embedded compliance controls. Only 12% of enterprises are operationally mature at that level by mid-2026. Utrecht is positioned as an innovation hub, so what does that mean for local enterprises?
Utrecht enterprises have a unique advantage. They're in a region with strong AI infrastructure and can leverage specialized frameworks to accelerate toward Tier 2 or 3 maturity. But acceleration only works if you start building governance frameworks now, not in August 2026. The enterprises that implement controls early get operational data under real conditions, 6 months to iterate and optimize before the enforcement deadline.
That's a smart point. So what does compliance actually require under the EU AI Act for agentic systems?
Multiple layers. First, documented risk assessments identifying potential harms from autonomous decision-making. If your agent makes lending decisions or manages healthcare workflows, regulators need transparency on how it could fail. Second, comprehensive training data documentation: where it came from, how representative it is, whether it contains biases. Third, human oversight mechanisms that actually work in practice, not just on paper.
Documentation is the theme. So organizations need to know their training data provenance, understand their agents' decision logic, and maintain audit trails. From a practical standpoint, where should an enterprise start?
Start with an AI readiness assessment. That's not buzzword consulting. It's genuinely mapping where you are across 3 dimensions: technical maturity of your AI infrastructure, organizational readiness around data governance and accountability, and regulatory alignment with the EU AI Act. You can't build compliant agents on weak foundations. Once you know your baseline, you design what we call an AI lead architecture, essentially a governance blueprint that embeds compliance controls into your agent design from day one, not retrofitted afterward.
AI lead architecture sounds like it's baking compliance into the system rather than bolting it on. What does that look like operationally?
It means decision points are traceable. Every action your agent takes generates a log that explains why, what data was considered, which rules applied, where human oversight kicked in. It means you're using data that's been vetted for bias and documented. It means your agent can explain itself to regulators and to users. And critically, it means you've identified which agents are high risk under the EU AI Act framework, those handling finance, employment, healthcare, criminal justice, and you're applying proportional controls.
Data sovereignty is another piece we should touch on. Europe has a specific approach to AI data, very different from the US or Asia. How does that shape enterprise strategy?
EU enterprises need to assume that sensitive data, financial records, health data, personal information, stays within European infrastructure and governance frameworks. That's not just compliance, it's competitive advantage. Enterprises that build agents designed for European data residency requirements can serve customers across the EU with confidence. Conversely, if you're trying to retrofit an agent architecture built for unrestricted data flows, you're in trouble. That's why the readiness assessment matters, understanding your data sovereignty posture before you scale agents.
So the smart move is designing for constraint from the beginning rather than fighting constraint later. That changes how you architect entire systems. And we're looking at 2026 as a real inflection point, not just a deadline to check off.
Right. August 2nd, 2026 is when enforcement begins, but the enterprises winning the Agentic AI game are those treating 2024 and 2025 as build and optimize windows. You want operational experience, refined governance models, and proven compliance mechanisms before regulators start active oversight. The gap between the 55% of enterprises with generative AI adoption and the 28% with governance frameworks, that's going to close fast.
For organizations listening in Utrecht and across Europe, what's the single most important action they should take right now in 2024?
Conduct that AI readiness assessment. Understand your current state across technology, data governance, and regulatory alignment. Identify which business processes could benefit from agentic systems and which are high risk under the EU AI Act. Then, and this is crucial, allocate resources to building governance frameworks. Alongside technical development. You can't separate compliance from architecture. It's all one system.
Governance and architecture together. Not sequential, not separate. One system. That's the key insight. And for listeners who want the full deep dive on EU AI Act requirements, architectural patterns, and implementation roadmaps for their specific industry, the complete article is on etherlink.ai. Sam, thanks for breaking this down.
Always great to explore this with you, Alex. The stakes are real for European enterprises, and the opportunity is genuine. Build smart, build compliant, and build now.
That's EtherLink AI Insights. We'll catch you next time.